no addition was bigger than getting Bralan Womack, the 5-star safety out of Flowwood and Hartfield Academy. 6 foot, 195, 200. If you go off of the composite ranking, he is. I had it on the 247. I got to switch over. 98, 6'7", 5-star, number 30 player in the country, number 1 player at his position, number 2 player in the state of Mississippi. Just an elite prospect. And obviously, I talked a lot about this on Monday night and picking him up and what getting him means for the program. But now that he is officially signed, it's just a huge addition in so many different ways. To get a player of that caliber on your defense, Mississippi State, with where they're at defensively and where they've been over these last few seasons, to get a 5-star player like that in, who it's not like it was just somehow flying under the radar, and it's not like Mississippi State was on him early, and that's what Ohio State wanted this kid. Texas A&M wanted this kid. Florida wanted this kid. He was committed to Auburn. You had a lot of big-time programs, and then the offer sheet goes well beyond that. You had a lot of really good programs that have had a history of developing big-time defensive backs that wanted this player. And it's Mississippi State that's able to get it done when it's all said and done. And that was such a spark. I think it helped Mississippi State out in terms of landing some of the players that they did on signing day and securing some of the flips that they did and picking up some momentum. I think it got the fan base rejuvenated a little bit, which you badly needed with where you've been at, to get some people excited for this program once again. And I think it was just it's a big sign of Mississippi State taking things seriously in a couple ways. I think, one, what it says about Jeff Lebby. Jeff Lebby was the lead recruiter, which you don't typically see an offensive-minded head coach be the lead recruiter on a defender, even when you're talking about a 5-star player. Typically, it's going to be either his position coach or the defensive coordinator. That's the guy who's the lead recruiter for that player. Jeff Lebby was the lead recruiter for Bralan Womack. Jeff Lebby stayed on him throughout this process, even when it looked like – I know that the talking point with Bralan is that for a long time, everyone was convinced this kid is not playing in the state of Mississippi. There's a trend of high-level players within this state feeling they need to go elsewhere. Unfortunately, and this doesn't just impact Mississippi State, this has impacted Ole Miss as well. There's unfortunately a stigma around Mississippi and a stigma around playing in Mississippi, and a lot of these guys feel that the goal in life is to get out of the state. And it's, where else can I go? So when they get that first opportunity, I can go play anywhere in the country. I'm going to jump at that opportunity. And that's been the case in the last couple of years with a lot of big-time players in the state. And Bralan Womack was looking like he was going to be another one of those guys. But rather than cut your losses and say, and it's not going to happen, Jeff Lebby stayed after him and recognized, we have to find a way to get this kid in the class. He is too talented a player within a few hours of campus to not be someone who can step in and come be a part of this turnaround and get us players on defense. That gives me a lot of hope in Jeff Lebby as the guy leading the program, and a lot of confidence of what he can do for Mississippi State. If your head coach is recruiting in that manner, and again, for a kid that felt like you had no shot of getting, who plays on the other side of the ball, I think if you're a State fan, you got to feel pretty good about what Lebby can do.
No doubt. I mean, I thought they made some really good moves. One guy I do want to point out real quick.
Well, hold on. We're not done on well, I got more I want to talk about with him.
No, I got you. Okay, we'll come back to that then. Getting Womack, though, obviously, it's I don't know how I want to put it. It's huge. It's a really big deal. Part of me wants to say that like Mississippi State doesn't get guys like that too often. I wouldn't say it like that.
You could. It's accurate.
I'll say it is, but I also think that it's been a minute since they've been able to reel in guys, like Bralan Womack. I have watched some good film on him. He's good size too, a 4-star in the state of Mississippi, and obviously that's the biggest guy that they signed yesterday, not in terms of size, but in terms of, you know, finding a finding a gem of a player, just someone special that I think could, I mean, well, let me ask you this. Do you think Bralan Womack could come in and ultimately have immediate impact? Or is this a guy that you want to work with and maybe you say give it another year or two?
He's an instant impact player. And
Sweet.
I do want to say, like, 247 has him as a 4-star, but if you go off the composite rank, he's a 5-star player. And
Nice.
he is the 7th
Okay.
highest rated signee in Mississippi State history. First 5-star since 2019 when they got Charles Cross. And hey, that worked out. The guy became a first-round pick at left tackle and is still on a second contract now with the Seattle Seahawks. Has done a great job in the league. So, they've had a few of these guys here or there, Jeff Simmons, Chris Jones, and then you really got to go back a ways before that. But they've had some of these big-time players before, but there's not a lot of them. So you're accurate in saying that you don't have a lot of these guys. And a few of them, it has taken some time, but this is a guy who can step in. If you're looking at Mississippi State's safety room, they're losing 3 of their top contributors at safety, with Brian Lanier graduating, Jerron Manning graduating, Hunter Washington graduating. Or I guess all those guys, it's not even necessarily graduating because it is just out of eligibility. You also have Stonka Burnside, who is someone that you were sort of hoping to develop into a high-level safety, transferring out of the program. Now, I think I have heard it's not like a done thing. And, of course, the portal is not opened yet. So it's just him announcing his intention to transfer. State's got about a week they got a few weeks to try and settle things and get him back on board if they want to keep him as a part of the team moving forward. So that's a guy who maybe could become something. But you have a hole at safety. You're going to need guys who can step in. And this is the type of talent that can really help you out. And I've got more on that, but I did want to hit this point because I was talking about with Levy and like how big of a sign it is that you held on to him. The fact that it didn't matter that you didn't get DJ Durkin to come in and be DC and DJ Durkin stayed at Auburn and you still got the signature when it's all said and done, again, speaks really loud, speaks volumes for MSU. So we talked about on Monday when this commitment happened that it felt like maybe there was some reading of the tea leaves, and Mississippi State fans were kind of trying to put the puzzle pieces together that ultimately wasn't fully there. Does this mean DJ Durkin's going to be State's DC? Because Womack wanted to play for Durkin at Auburn. That was a big reason why he committed, and he wanted Durkin to get the head coaching job. And he was, I think, expecting that DJ Durkin was going to be the head coach at Auburn. Once that didn't happen, that's part of why he decommitted and flipped to Mississippi State. And he was pretty upset that DJ Durkin was not going to be there. And we hear that, and then we hear that Jeff Lebby's the lead recruiter. And there's a little bit, okay, hold on here. Like, are we talking about that if Lebby's the lead recruiter, then clearly he didn't sign with Coleman Hutzler at DC. There's a lot of smoke that State is going to be making a change at DC within the coming days. Nothing official, but there's a lot of smoke that staff changes are coming. Is it possible there was some behind closed doors dealings happening here that part of getting Bralan Womack was saying, hey, DJ Durkin is going to be your DC at Mississippi State? Well, DJ Durkin chooses to stay with Auburn. Alex Golesh keeps him on staff there. And immediately the Auburn side is like, boom, we're getting him back. Like, Bralan Womack, come back home. You're going to be an Auburn Tiger once again. And I don't think – we know now, people around the program had zero worry of that whatsoever. But from the fan base perspective, there was a lot of, oh no, what's going to happen here? Are you going to hold on to him, or is this going to be some signing day shenanigans and you lose him in the final hour? Signs Mississippi State. Zero drama. Like when it was his time to go up to sign, he went up and signed, and he was a Bulldog. He was decked out in maroon, had a little walking bully statue, had a cowbell. No issue, Mississippi State Bulldog. Which again, knowing how tight-knit this guy was with DJ Durkin and Auburn, and that's all signs were pointed to him going there. And also all signs, if he were going to flip, everybody thought he was going to go to Texas A&M. And I know it's been put out now, he basically gave Texas A&M. It's funny because I'm just talking about how locked in he was on Auburn. After he visited A&M, which was 1 week after he visited State, he told the staff at Texas A&M, I'm going to be an Aggie. He didn't commit to them publicly, but he gave them like a He gave them a verbal in private. They're like, hey, I'm coming here. It never happened. Auburn was able to fight that off, but Mississippi State fought through that as well. And Mississippi State and Jeff Lebby were able to get him on board. And even once the Auburn situation looked like it could be more favorable for him, with Durkin still being there, still signs with Mississippi State. It's a great sign for Jeff Lebby and what he can do as a recruiter. But, man, it's also a great sign. Mississippi State getting its act together. I alluded to this earlier that there was some talk about some boosters making sure Mississippi State was going to be lined up the way they needed to be, to make sure you had things set up behind the scenes like, hey, we can go get players, which I think there's been a lot of positive momentum for that for State over the past year. I think this is a great example of it because we don't have to kid ourselves. You definitely had to pay a good bit of money to get Bralan Womack to come be a Mississippi State Bulldog. That's just how the game is played these days, and there's no need to dance around it. But Mississippi State was able to do that. Mississippi State was able to give him what he needed to come be a Bulldog. And when you're able to beat out the likes of Ohio State, Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M, that is a great sign for what this program is ultimately capable of. Now, getting back to just into close out thoughts on Womack, talking about him as a player and a guy that we think can provide an impact. You know, I'm not a scout. I've gone through and I've watched, his huddle film that everyone else has shown. And I've seen some of that, and I've read the scouting reports on him, but I don't pretend that I have the ability to tell you, oh yeah, that guy's a ball player. I mean, I can do that, but I mean, breakdown technique, all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to be able to tell you all that. But the one thing that stood out in the scouting report specifically was the idea of versatility and then what he can do as a coverage player, including in man coverage. So from a versatility standpoint, they talked about, one is the fact that he was a 1,000-yard receiver playing offense, also a very good kick returner, but then the ball skills you see is a safety, which having that ability as a receiver and as a return man tells you this is a guy that, one, he's going to be able to make plays on the football and probably force some really good turnovers with interceptions, but then two, make plays after the pick. So that's great. But his versatility as a DB, where he can be a deep middle of the field player, he can be in a split safety defense. You can get him involved in the run fit. And you can also get him involved in one-on-one coverage. That's the big thing for me. Having a guy who can play some man coverage, because Mississippi State has had some solid safeties over the years. In my time following the program, like the big names, Nico Whitley, Jonathan Abram, and then now Isaac Smith. Well, those were all great players, but none of them were great man coverage players at safety. Nico Whitley was kind of like that deep center fielder type guy, would go out, track the ball, make some big interceptions, and would lay the lumber. He'd knock the crap out of you. But he was not a guy that you were going to line him up in one-on-one coverage. I think State did it one time in the 2012 Egg Bowl, and it did not go well for them, for as good of a player as he was. Jonathan Abram, old school box safety, downhill, going to get involved in the run fit, be a big-time tackler, not a great coverage player. Didn't have to be a great coverage player because of the defensive line and linebackers he had in front of him, but he was a tackling machine and a hard hitter. Isaac Smith, he's a linebacker playing safety. I think his coverage skill improved this year. I think we saw more from Isaac this year, being a guy who can play the middle of the field and work in zone coverage. But Isaac Smith is a man coverage defender. That's not a strength for him. The reason this matters, because, it doesn't matter that that's not a strength for those guys. You can find ways to put them on the field and utilize them. Clearly, Mississippi State did. They all have had or are currently having great careers. But in this era of college football, you can't have your only good coverage players be your corners. You have to have somebody that can line up in the slot against a slot receiver, against a pass-catching tight end, and cover him one-on-one. Because think back to how many times we've seen Mississippi State over the last few years, and I'm not talking about the last couple of years in the Coleman-Hutzler defense. Go back to Zach Arnett, who had good defenses in Starkville and far better players than you have on the roster now. And how many times did we get a safety matched up one-on-one with a top receiver and it go very poorly for MSU? It happened a lot. That was like the one big flaw that we saw time and time again. Well, that was because there's times where you've got to have somebody cover the slot man-to-man. And Mississippi State's just not had the guys who were good enough to do it and handle that well. This is a guy in Bralan Womack who it sounds like could develop into that. Like there's scouting reports that say he could play corner. If you needed to play him at corner, you could. But if you wanted to play him at nickel, you could play him at nickel. And I think that's what would be really intriguing for me. Can this be the guy that Mississippi State gets, that you finally get a piece on defense that can play man coverage in the slot, to where you're not getting toasted by these teams that have the big-time slot receivers, have the big-time pass-catching tight ends, which has been something State has gotten exploited with year after year after year. I feel like Womack's the guy who could step in and give you that. So really good piece, really talented player, and it's a huge win for Mississippi State. I think it signals a lot for what this team is able to be.